Welcome back to Crime Time, Inc. I think we have a particularly grim case for you today, the Jonestown Massacre.
Yeah, it's a case that, continues to fascinate and horrify, even decades later. Over 900 people died, including more than 300 children. It's a stark reminder of the potential for human manipulation and the devastating consequences of blind faith.
Okay, let's try to understand how this tragedy unfolded, starting with the man at the center of it all, Jim Jones.
Yeah. Jones's early life, it was marked by a disturbing fascination with death.
Hmm.
Neighbors, in his rural Indiana community, they recall him holding mock funerals for animals. Some he even killed himself.
That's a deeply unsettling detail. What do we know about his childhood that might explain this?
Well, Jones often blamed his aggression on a lack of love and understanding. He spoke of feeling isolated, abandoned by his parents. He once said, "I was ready to kill by the end of the third grade. Nobody gave me love, any understanding." It's a window into the mind of someone who would eventually orchestrate the deaths of hundreds.
It's certainly suggestive of deep-seated trauma. How did this troubled childhood pave the way for his religious leadership?
Well, Jones had a knack for drawing people in, with his charisma and message of social justice. He started his ministry in Indianapolis,
Yeah.
even connecting with the Disciples of Grace denomination.
So he had legitimate religious credentials.
Initially, yes, but he was eventually dismissed from a Methodist position for stealing church funds. Of course, he spun it as leaving because of their segregationist policies.
Mm.
This pattern of manipulation and distortion, it became a hallmark of his leadership.
So even early on, there were signs of the person he would become. How did his teachings evolve from traditional Christianity to the apostolic socialism he promoted?
It was a gradual shift. Jones began to reject traditional Christian beliefs, claiming the Bible was a tool of oppression. Instead, he advocated for apostolic socialism, which was really a blend of socialist ideals, distorted Christian concepts, and increasingly his own personality cult.
It sounds like a potent and dangerous mix. Did this appeal to a specific kind of follower?
His message resonated with people who felt marginalized, the poor, minorities, those disillusioned with mainstream society. He offered them a sense of belonging, purpose, and ultimately escape from the world's perceived evils. This promise of utopia would prove fatal.
That utopian vision ultimately led to Jonestown, right? What can you tell us about the temple's relocation to Guyana?
By the mid-1960s, Jones had relocated his People's Temple to California, where his following and political influence grew rapidly. However, media scrutiny and allegations of abuse began to surface. Facing increasing pressure, Jones decided to establish Jonestown in Guyana, promising his followers a socialist paradise free from outside interference.
So Jones was already using fear and paranoia to manipulate his followers before they even arrived in Guyana.
Absolutely, he fostered an us versus them mentality, claiming the outside world was corrupt and that they were the chosen ones. This isolation and fear-mongering were crucial to his control.
Let's talk about life inside Jonestown. Was it truly the paradise he promised?
Far from it. Jonestown was a tightly controlled environment where residents endured hard labor, communal living, and Jones's increasingly erratic and abusive behavior. Loudspeakers blared his sermons day and night, and any perceived infraction was met with harsh punishment.
We've read about these bizarre white nights he would stage. What exactly were those?
These were essentially suicide drills. Jones would convince his followers they were under attack, forcing them to drink what he claimed was poisoned Flavor Aid. It was a horrifying tactic to desensitize them to the idea of death and test their loyalty.
That's a chilling example of the psychological manipulation he employed. Were there any attempts by residents to escape Jonestown?
There were, but escape from Jonestown was incredibly difficult. The commune was isolated deep in the Guyanese jungle, with armed guards patrolling the perimeter. Defectors risked being caught and severely punished.
So Jones had essentially created a prison camp disguised as a utopia. At what point did things start to unravel?
The situation took a drastic turn with the arrival of Congressman Leo Ryan. In November 1978, Ryan, prompted by concerns from relatives of Jonestown residents, led a delegation to investigate conditions in the commune.
Ryan's visit was supposed to be a fact-finding mission, right? What happened when he arrived at Jonestown?
Initially, Jones tried to present a facade of normalcy, showcasing the supposed harmony of his community. However, some residents saw Ryan's visit as their chance to escape, passing him notes pleading for help.
So people were trying to alert Ryan to the true situation in Jonestown.
Yes. The tension escalated as more residents expressed their desire to leave with Ryan. This defiance clearly rattled Jones, who was losing control of his carefully constructed narrative.
How did Jones react to this potential mass exodus?
On November 18th, as Ryan and his delegation prepared to depart from a nearby airstrip with a group of defectors, a group of Jones's armed guards opened fire, killing Ryan and 4 others, including members of the media.
This attack was clearly a turning point, an act of desperation by Jones to maintain control.
Absolutely. The attack sealed Jonestown's fate. Jones, realizing the outside world would soon descend upon them, decided to put his long-threatened plan into action. He gathered his followers and announced it was time for revolutionary suicide.
The infamous Flavor Aid incident. Can you describe what happened next?
It was a scene of unimaginable horror. Jones exhorted his followers to drink cyanide-laced Flavor Aid, claiming it was a revolutionary act to escape the evils of the outside world. Parents were forced to administer the poison to their children before consuming it themselves.
The audio recording of that event, the death tape, is a chilling document of the tragedy unfolding.
Yes, the tape captures the chaos and terror of those final moments. You can hear the cries of children, the pleas of dissenters, and Jones's chilling pronouncements, all against a backdrop of eerie calm.
How did Jones himself die?
Jones was found dead from a gunshot wound to the head. While officially ruled a suicide, there is speculation about whether he directed someone else to kill him or took his own life in the final moments of the massacre.
What a horrific end to a horrific chapter. Over 900 people died that day, a grim testament to the power of manipulation and the dangers of unchecked authority.
It's a tragedy that continues to raise questions about human nature, the allure of cults, and the fragility of our own critical thinking.
We'll delve deeper into those questions when we return.
Yeah, it is hard to comprehend how Jones amassed such a devoted following, leading them to such a tragic end.
That's what I find so perplexing. How did he manage to exert such control over his followers that they were willing to follow him to their deaths?
Well, Jones was a master manipulator. He preyed on the vulnerable, offering them, a sense of belonging and purpose in a world where they felt marginalized. He promised them a utopia, a socialist paradise where they would be safe and valued.
But we know that Jonestown was anything but a paradise. It was a place of fear, hardship, and ultimately mass death. How did he maintain that illusion for so long?
Jones employed a sophisticated system of psychological manipulation and control. He isolated his followers from the outside world, cutting off contact with, family and friends. He instilled fear and paranoia, constantly reminding them of the supposed threats lurking beyond Jonestown.
We've also read about the use of informants within the temple.
Yes. Jones encouraged members to report on each other, creating an atmosphere of suspicion and distrust. This effectively silenced any potential dissent or opposition.
And then there were the White Knights, those staged suicide drills. It's difficult to grasp the psychological impact those must have had on his followers.
Right. Those drills were a key part of his control strategy. They desensitized his followers to the idea of death and made them more compliant to his will. It was a gradual process of breaking down their resistance and normalizing the unthinkable.
Let's shift our focus back to Congressman Ryan's visit. We know his attempt to investigate Jonestown and help people leave ended tragically. But what can you tell us about Ryan himself?
Leo Ryan was a Democratic congressman from California, known for his commitment to human rights and social justice. He was deeply troubled by the reports of abuse and human rights violations coming out of Jonestown, and he felt a moral obligation to investigate.
It was a courageous decision to travel to such a remote and potentially dangerous place. He must have known there were risks involved.
But he did. Ryan was determined to uncover the truth about Jonestown and offer assistance to those who wanted to leave. He believed in the power of government to protect its citizens, even those who had joined a controversial group, like the People's Temple.
Sadly, his courage ultimately cost him his life. Why did Jones decide to have Ryan and his group attacked at the airstrip?
Well, Jones likely saw Ryan's visit as a direct threat to his authority and control. He feared that Ryan would expose the abuses happening in Jonestown and encourage more people to defect. The attack was a desperate attempt to silence Ryan and maintain his grip on the community.
Do we know who specifically carried out the attack on Ryan's group?
Well, several members of Jones's security detail, known as the Red Brigade, were identified as the gunmen. They were among his most trusted and fanatical followers, completely indoctrinated in his ideology. They were also armed with a variety of weapons, including rifles, pistols, and even crossbows.
It was a carefully planned and coordinated ambush. It seems that Jones had been preparing for this kind of confrontation for some time.
It's possible. The level of violence suggests a premeditated act, not a spontaneous outburst. Jones was a control freak, and he wouldn't have tolerated any challenge to his authority.
Let's talk about the aftermath of the airstrip attack. What happened back in Jonestown while Ryan's group was under attack?
Knowing that the authorities would soon descend upon Jonestown, Jones wasted no time putting his plan for revolutionary suicide into action. He gathered his followers and began urging them to drink the cyanide-laced flavor aid, claiming it was the only way to escape the encroaching evil of the outside world.
We have that horrifying death tape recording to provide a glimpse into the events of that day.
Right. That tape is one of the most disturbing pieces of evidence from Jonestown. It captures Jones's final sermon, in which he calmly and methodically convinces his followers to commit suicide. He uses phrases like, revolutionary suicide, claiming it's a noble act of defiance against an oppressive world.
It's chilling to hear him exploit their fears and manipulate them into taking their own lives and the lives of their children. Were there any accounts of resistance or dissent during the mass suicide?
There were a few. On the death tape, you can hear the voices of some individuals questioning Jones's plan and pleading for their lives. Sadly, their pleas were drowned out by the wave of fear and obedience that had consumed the community. It's a tragic reminder of the power of groupthink and the difficulty of breaking free from the influence of a charismatic leader, even when that leader is leading you to your death.
The scene that greeted the authorities who arrived in Jonestown the following day must have been horrific.
It was a scene of unimaginable carnage. Over 900 bodies lay scattered throughout the commune, including hundreds of children. The images from Jonestown shocked the world. It's hard to believe that something like this could happen in the modern era.
It's a stark reminder of the dark potential that exists within humanity, even in the context of a supposedly utopian community.
Yeah. The Jonestown Massacre was a tragedy on an unprecedented scale, a dark chapter in human history that continues to haunt us to this day.
Given the scale of this tragedy and the involvement of the U.S. government through Congressman Ryan, it's not surprising that some alternative explanations have emerged.
You're talking about the conspiracy theories surrounding Jonestown. Yeah, there are quite a few.
Can you tell us about some of the most prominent ones?
Well, one theory claims that Jonestown was a CIA mind control experiment gone wrong. This theory suggests that Jones was working with the CIA to develop techniques for controlling large populations. Proponents of this theory often point to Jones's connections with prominent politicians and his alleged involvement in intelligence gathering activities as evidence.
Does that theory hold any water?
Well, most of the evidence cited by proponents of the CIA mind control theory is circumstantial, or based on speculation. There's no concrete evidence to suggest that Jones was working with the CIA or any other intelligence agency.
So more likely a product of people trying to make sense of the senseless. Are there other theories?
Another theory claims that Jonestown was a socialist utopia that was sabotaged by the U.S. government. This theory, it posits that Jones was genuinely trying to create a socialist paradise, but that his efforts were undermined by external forces, namely the U.S. government, which feared the spread of socialist ideas.
So in this theory, Jones is painted as a victim of political machinations, rather than the perpetrator of a horrific crime.
Exactly. It's an attempt to reframe the narrative and portray Jones as a well-intentioned idealist who was thwarted by powerful forces. However, this theory ignores the overwhelming evidence of Jones's abuse, manipulation, and descent into madness.
It's a way of avoiding the uncomfortable truth about Jones and the horrific reality of what happened at Jonestown.
I think you're right. It's easier to believe in a grand conspiracy than to accept the fact that a single individual could exert such a profound influence over others and lead them to their deaths.
Are there any other theories we should discuss?
There's a theory suggesting that not everyone in Jonestown willingly participated in the mass suicide. Some believe that many of the residents, particularly the children, were forcibly injected with cyanide, essentially murdered against their will.
What evidence is there to support this theory?
Well, this theory is based on the presence of injection marks found on many of the bodies. While the official investigation concluded that most people died from drinking the poison flavor aid, some experts believe that injections may have played a larger role than initially thought.
So there's still some uncertainty surrounding the exact details of how everyone died in Jonestown.
There is. It's likely that a combination of factors contributed to the deaths, including both voluntary drinking of the poison and forced injections. The chaos and terror of those final moments make it difficult to reconstruct a precise sequence of events.
It's important to acknowledge that even within the context of this horrific event, there were individuals who managed to escape the final tragedy. We have accounts from several survivors,
Yeah.
including Leslie Wilson, Vernon Gosney, and Tim Carter.
Their stories are essential for understanding the complexities of Jonestown and the factors that led to such a devastating loss of life. Their perspectives provide valuable insights into the psychological hold that Jones had over his followers and the harrowing experiences of those who managed to break free.
Can you share some details about their escapes?
Leslie Wilson, for example, managed to escape with her son on the morning of the massacre. Pretending to go on a picnic, she endured a grueling trek through the dense jungle, fearing for her life and the life of her child.
It's an incredible story of survival against all odds. What about the other survivors you mentioned?
Vernon Gosney had become increasingly disillusioned with Jones and the temple. He saw Ryan's visit as his chance to escape and bravely joined the group of defectors at the airstrip. His decision to leave was a testament to his courage and his determination to break free from Jones's control.
And Tim Carter.
Tim Carter was tasked with delivering a package of money to the Soviet embassy in Georgetown. This errand, unknowingly to him, saved his life, as it took him away from Jonestown just before the mass suicide began. In a sense, he was saved by a twist of fate.
The Jonestown Massacre was a turning point in the public's perception of cults, raising awareness about the dangers of charismatic leadership and the devastating consequences of blind faith. What impact did this tragedy have on society's understanding of cults?
Well, the Jonestown Massacre sparked a national conversation about cult dynamics, psychological manipulation, and the need for greater vigilance in protecting vulnerable individuals from exploitation. It shattered the image of cults as fringe groups, composed of misfits and extremists, revealing that anyone, regardless of background or intelligence, could be susceptible to the allure of a charismatic leader and the promise of a better world.
Did this increased awareness lead to any tangible changes in how society dealt with cults?
Yeah. The tragedy led to increased scrutiny of new religious movements and the development of intervention strategies to help people. Caught in the grip of cults, organizations like the Cult Awareness Network were established to provide support for former cult members and their families, and to educate the public of the dangers of cults.
So the Jonestown Massacre had a lasting impact on our understanding of cults and the importance of critical thinking and skepticism.
Absolutely. It serves as a stark reminder that blind faith and obedience can have deadly consequences, and that it's crucial to question authority and think for ourselves, especially when it comes to matters of faith and belief.
It seems that the lessons learned from Jonestown have had a profound and enduring impact on our society.
The massacre was a watershed moment, forcing us to confront the dark side of human nature and the fragility of our own critical thinking. Its legacy continues to shape how we view cults, charismatic leadership, and the importance of individual autonomy.
It's a reminder that we must always be vigilant in safeguarding our freedom of thought and our right to question authority. We must never allow ourselves to be blindly led, no matter how appealing the promises or how charismatic the leader.
You are absolutely right. We need to remember the victims of Jonestown and honor their memory by promoting critical thinking, skepticism, and a healthy distrust of those who claim to have all the answers.
It's a crucial message for our time, especially given the proliferation of misinformation and the rise of extremist ideologies.
We must learn from the mistakes of the past to ensure that tragedies like Jonestown never happen again.
It's a responsibility we all share as individuals and as a society.
Yeah, it's about fostering a healthy skepticism, and a willingness to challenge our own beliefs and assumptions. We need to be wary of those who claim to have all the answers, or who promise easy solutions to complex problems.
And particularly wary of those who demand unquestioning loyalty and obedience. That seems to be a recurring theme in these types of situations.
Right, yeah. Those are often red flags for potential abuse and exploitation. It's essential to recognize the signs of manipulation and to trust our instincts when something feels wrong.
The Jonestown Massacre was a horrific event, but it also provides valuable lessons about the dangers of groupthink, the allure of charismatic leaders, and the importance of critical thinking.
It's a reminder that we must remain vigilant in defending our freedom of thought, our right to question, and our responsibility to think critically. We must never forget the victims of Jonestown and strive to create a world where such tragedies are never repeated.
This has been a truly heavy case, but incredibly important to discuss. Thank you for helping us unpack this complex and tragic event.
It was my pleasure.
I'm really looking forward to hearing what Simon and Tom think about this case in their weekly review on Sunday. But in the meantime, Tune in tomorrow for another great true crime episode.